Hello, it's Khabir Southwick, whole food nutritionist, Ayurvedic consultant, herbalist based in Ojai, California. Thank you once again. Today we're going to talk about understanding the Vata body type and an overview of the Vata diet and the Vata lifestyle guideline recommendation. So again, we need to understand what is the Vata body type. If a car mechanic was to look at certain cars, they will look at a car and say, oh, this car tends to be dry, this car tends to have a good fuel pump, this car tends to overheat. Well, this is the way the Ayurvedic practitioner looks at the different body types. Once we know a person is a Vata, then we can be sure that the Vata is generally going to be on the dry side, tend towards constipation, dry stools, generally is able to get off weight easily, and sometimes difficult to put on weight. Vatas tend to lean towards being underweight, maybe not later in life, but most of their lives. They tend to have anxiety, nervousness, and at least restless sleep. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're Vata, you have all these qualities, but it means that this is your tendency. This is where you're more likely to go in that direction. And maybe as you've aged and you become older, you've learned to take certain actions and eat certain foods to avoid those typical Vata imbalances. But if you were to have understood you were a Vata at an early age, or your parents would have known, and they could have given you these guidelines, and you could have avoided many of these Vata imbalances throughout your whole life. So first, we know what the Vata is like, so as far as their qualities. So now let's look at how to balance out the Vata. First, the Vata tends to be irregular and erratic, we could say, and doesn't follow clear schedules, and sometimes hungry, sometimes not hungry, sometimes having good mood, sometimes not having good mood. They tend to fluctuate. So what is most important to balance that out is a regular schedule. I find many Vatas end up snacking throughout the day, not having complete meals, sometimes eating breakfast, sometimes not eating breakfast, sometimes eating it late at night, sometimes not eating late at night. Vata needs regularity. And if the Vata is underweight, thin, frail, then they should have 4 meals a day, starting early in the morning, and then another one around lunchtime, and one in the afternoon, and then one in the evening, and there should be very little eating at night. In between, the Vata can have sweet, juicy fruits to keep the blood sugar going and to help keep the colon full in between meals. But this is really the most important point for the Vata to learn, is to have more schedule. So this means to not skip meals. This is very important for the Vata for different reasons than other body types, and they have a sensitive digestive system. So not skipping meals will strengthen the digestive system. Vata tends to be a very active, moving person, so they tend not to even sit down and eat. So I always tell the Vatas, you need to sit down, you need to be calm and eat slowly and take your time during a meal to improve your digestion. As far as elimination of bowels, Vatas tend to be the most constipated and the most dry, so this always has to be a focus for Vata. So basically, the first step is to, of course, have regular meals at the same time to improve your digestion and avoid the snacking and grazing, and also to have moist foods, not dry fruits, but moist fruits, not rice crackers, but cooked rice with butter. So that's very important. And Vata also needs to avoid extreme colds and cold weather. Avoid cold food, leftover food, food that just came out of the refrigerator, and even too much raw vegetables. And they'll do better with cooked vegetables, cooked foods. It will help. It will be warmer because the Vata tends to be cold. It will be easier to digest because the Vata tends to have a sensitive digestive system. And by cooking it, it's partially cooked and broken down. It becomes much easier for the Vata to digest. So also for Vata, they shouldn't overexert themselves in exercise. Walking is the most recommended exercise for the Vata. And also the Vata tends to have a tendency towards stress, anxiety, and thinking too much. So meditation, finding a time each day to be calm and relax is very important. Vata tends to have the most energy in the morning and then becomes more fatigued in the afternoon. and then becomes restless in the evening, has difficulty sleeping. As far as the foods that are best for the Vata, when it comes to overall basis, the food should be moist, the food should be warm, food should be sweet and salty. Foods to be avoided by the Vata are dry foods, too light of foods, and even raw vegetables and salads. As far as grains, Vata does very well on rice, basmati rice, oatmeal, quinoa, spelt, and even a whole wheat when their digestion is good. The grains that are going to be more irritating and dry to the Vata are going to be more corn, rye, buckwheat, and even millet. As far as protein goes, the Vata does quite well on a little meat, little pieces of meat. I wouldn't have large amounts. A fish would be the most recommended animal-based protein source for the Vata, but it would be preferable that the Vata would move more towards having more legumes as a protein source. But you have to be careful as a Vata because most beans are not recommended as they are very gassy for the Vata. These are generally the large beans, the pinto bean, the kidney bean, as such, the bigger beans. The smaller beans like garbanzo beans, mung bean, and of course the lentils are generally the most recommended legume for the Vata. So lentils, white basmati rice is a very nice combination for the Vata. With mild seasoning, cumin, coriander. Cumin is very good for gas. Coriander is very good for digestion. Sea salt. Vatas need salt to help them retain water. Vatas do very well with oily food as well as moist food. This also will help the bowels by having more oily food, by pouring olive oil all over vegetables before eating them, and using oil freely will help the Vata. As far as fruits, the main restriction for the Vata is to avoid astringent and sour fruits, like cranberry and persimmon, and dried fruit. Dried fruit should be avoided by anybody who has dry skin and constipated, but particularly the Vata will do much better with juicy, warm fruits. And then when it comes to dairy, the Vata does very well with dairy products. Of course, I've never advocated homogenized and pasteurized milk, but we're talking about raw milk here, raw goat milk or raw cow milk. Warm is very suitable for the Vata. Warm cow milk at night with a little cardamom, cumin, ginger in it. This will be very pleasant for the Vata and help them to sleep better. So many people have abandoned milk, but I've put many Vatas on raw milk and they found much pleasure in it. It helped them to feel more grounded, give them more protein. In many cases it helped them to put on more weight. Drinking warm milk at night helped with sleep and relaxation. Milk should generally not be drinking cold in the first place, and I would never do pasteurized milk. So we're talking about, once again, a raw butter, raw dairy, raw cheese. Most of these dairy products, when the Vata's digestive system is not having a problem and is functioning fine, are very suitable for the Vata, particularly the frail, the underweight, the thin, and the Vata child, of course, who's thin, needs a substantial amount of oil and dairy products to build more bones, to build more tissue, to put on more weight, and to take away this frailness. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, Vata also does very well on 4 meals a day, and this will help to balance out many of these tendencies that I mentioned earlier about the Vata: insomnia, anxiety, sleeplessness, nervousness, and by eating a little bit more and having heavier and warmer foods. When it comes to the vegetables, the Vata does very good mostly on the root vegetables. This would be the sweet potatoes, beets, carrots, and doesn't do as well on the flowers and the leafy greens unless they're cooked or steamed. But the main category to be avoided for vegetables for the Vata is the cruciferous family: cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. True, these are very healthy vegetables, but they're not suitable for the Vata, and many Vatas already have learned to avoid them. So I hope that helps you understand how to live and eat as a Vata. This information is very ancient information, so you can find more information about this online, I'm sure. But I hope this gave you a quick overview, and I hope it helps you to adjust your life to find greater balance and happiness as a Vata. Thank you very much.